I know you're probably thinking, there's gotta be a better way for him to spend his time, but just because it's true doesn't mean you have to say it. Welcome back to Storytime. If you missed my previous video, this is a retrospective series looking back at every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU.
Please don't call yourself fat.
We'll be breaking down story elements and showing how these movies are all pretty much train wrecks. Today, we're looking at Iron Man, the first entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We'll be going over basically every element of the story, so if you haven't seen this movie and are concerned about spoilers, or can't abide critical discourse about movies a multinational corporation tricked you into liking when you were a kid.
Fairly warned be thee, says I.
Before we jump into the movie, I think we should first lay a little groundwork about stories. So, what is a story? It's one of those things that feels pretty intuitive to define, but can be tricky to pin down. Obviously, stories can take many forms, from novels to plays to movies and beyond, but all narrative has pretty much the same DNA, the same few core elements which are always necessary. If you write something that is missing these elements, you don't have a story. This is not to say that what you have is not good, or not cool, or not interesting. It's just not narrative.
Not bread, you get it? Huh? You see?
Here's my breakdown. To have a story, you must have a person, in a place, doing a thing, encountering resistance, and working to overcome that resistance. The action that results from these elements is the plot. Obviously, there's tremendous flexibility in how these elements are represented and combined within a given story, but they are always there. If you remove any of them, you do not have a narrative. It might be interesting, beautifully written, and thought-provoking, but it's not a story.
Not bread.
Of course, just by including these things, you are in no way guaranteed a good story. A story's real impact comes from the way these pieces are developed, individually and in tandem. Poor development can kill the coolest ideas, and thoughtful development can elevate mediocre ones. For my analysis of Iron Man and the MCU as a whole, I'll be mainly focusing on three of these elements: character, conflict, and plot, though we'll touch on other issues as they arise. We'll be asking how each movie develops these elements and what they ultimately create, in terms of both the individual movie and the series as a whole. Iron Man is a 2008 film directed by Jon Favreau. Before Iron Man, he was probably best known for being a prolific character actor and for directing your favorite Christmas movie, Elf. The film has 4 credited writers. These guys, 2 of whom wrote Children of Men and some other stuff, and 2 of whom wrote this, about which I know nothing. It also has approximately 38 producers, who, as near as I can tell, are all pretty much company people for Marvel. Roughly, the story is this. Tony Stark is a billionaire weapons mogul who gets kidnapped by terrorists in the Middle East. To escape, he constructs an articulated mechanical suit powered by the arc reactor he also constructs to keep shrapnel out of his heart. Then, once he is home, he decides, for reasons, to build more suits, and his business partner continues to try and kill him, for reasons. Now, let's look closer at our main group of characters. Tony is by far the most thoroughly characterized figure in Iron Man. From an exposition pill early on, we know he was a boy genius, especially with regards to math, engineering, and mechanics, and is the son of a pioneering weapons maker whose company he now runs. He seems fine with this, even proud, I would say. Remember this for when it's not true in later movies. One of the things I like about Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony is how well his characterization comes through in action, often when he's alone. Through his early actions, we know that Tony thinks broadly and quickly more than deeply and critically. He is impulsive but committed to his conclusions. He's a playboy who treats those around him pretty poorly. If not maliciously, he is at least dismissive and unappreciative. He seems to struggle to express emotion. In the movie, this usually comes off as him being too smart for normal human connection and interaction, though sometimes it's also clear that he really hates being made to feel vulnerable. Overall, I think everyone does a great job getting his character off the ground. He is interesting, if a little familiar at times, and full of potential for development. The other characters don't fare quite as well. Obviously, since they aren't the protagonists, we're not expecting them to be fully rendered like Tony is, but I think they all represent missed opportunities. Basically, all the other characters in the movie are tools to facilitate plot. For starters, Pepper is Tony's longtime personal assistant. At least for 10 years, seems like, but I don't think the movie specifies. She really only has one character trait. She is devoted to Tony. This manifests in a couple of ways. One is that she's good at her job, she's discreet with other people, and kind of nannyish with Tony sometimes. The other is that she clearly has more than professional affection for Tony. She claims to have no one else in her life and doesn't appear to really have any interests other than him. I think the movie wants this to help us root for Tony's overtures when they come, but really it mostly just reinforces how toxic of an employer he is and how underwritten Pepper is, even if Gwyneth Paltrow does help humanize her. Rhodes is an Air Force guy and liaison to Stark Industries. He also has only one trait: total dedication to the cause of the military. This movie strongly takes the default post-9/11 jingoist position that any film wanting military cooperation needed to at the time. Basically, that a robust American military presence in the Middle East is necessary and good, and that isolated terrorist cells in those regions pose an immediate and massive existential threat. Rhodes has also apparently been friends with Tony for a long time, though apart from Tony constantly being a dick to him, this is never clarified. We don't get any actual history or really see what Rhodes gets out of it. Obi is the longtime number 2 to Stark Sr. and now Tony. Again, he only has one real character trait, and that is a passionate hatred for Tony. However, we don't get any real idea of how this came about or what it is rooted in. More on that later. Finally, there is an ambiguously ethnic science man in the cave with Tony, and his only trait is to be a spiritual advisor to Tony. His one overriding purpose is to live long enough to put this one weapons manufacturer on the path of righteousness. He is basically a spirit guide. And that's it. I know S.H.I.E.L.D. Man shows up, but in this movie he is basically just the benignly faceless face of a government agency that is mostly portrayed as a nuisance. So to sum up, Tony is the only character that is really fully realized. I think in the context of this single movie, this is fine. Obviously, he is the protagonist, but all other characters, most of whom will continue throughout the series, really only serve as foils for different areas of Tony's life. Pepper gets his personal life, Obadiah gets his professional life, Rhodes also gets his professional life, but different, and the spirit guide gets personal life, but different. These are characters defined by their roles rather than by their characterization. As such, they have no real development. Again, fine enough for one movie, especially one with such a charismatic protagonist, even though it's kind of lazy, but this impedes the success of the larger story as it moves along. All this said, our main character does experience some significant development over the course of the movie. Believable, effective development usually comes from the conflict a character experiences and works through. So that's what we can expect here, right? Right? If you remember anything from today, remember this. Iron Man is a movie that has no meaningful conflict of any kind. Now, I group conflict into 2 categories: internal and external. External conflict is stuff that happens outside of the character. Oh no, a tornado is coming. Usually, though not always, an external conflict serves mainly as an inciting incident, the thing that gets the story moving. A tornado destroyed our neighbor's house and now they have to live with us. Internal conflict happens within the character, some kind of crisis or dilemma. Usually, though not always, an internal conflict ends up being the primary conflict of the story and drives a character's growth and choices and the resulting plot. I'm attracted to my neighbor and feel really tempted to cheat on my spouse with them now that they live here. Now, it's not like Iron Man doesn't have good material to draw from when developing conflict. It's just that it chooses at every turn to not do that. This is a common choice throughout the MCU. Sometimes this is pretty minor. For example, Tony is always a dick to Rhodes. Like, always. He makes him look foolish in front of his colleagues, he is dismissive of his professional input, and he undermines his military authority. You'd think that that would lead to a conflict between the two men, but it doesn't. Instead, it leads to plot issues. It has always been puzzling to me that Rhodes basically covers for Tony after he infiltrates and disrupts an active and sensitive war zone and gets into a skirmish with real US forces that could lead to actual casualties. Such a cover-up would probably be considered like treason, right? It doesn't make sense for Rhodes to do because, as near as we can tell, it is an unmotivated act. Either Rhodes feels sentimental about Tony for reasons that we never see and therefore can't understand. I guess he doesn't want him to die. Or the plot just needs Tony to get out of the war zone. Don't think about it, it's fine. This is a problem that investigation of conflict could have prevented. For example, let's say that while Rhodes still considers Tony a friend, he's had enough of his antics, so he decides to pull a prank of his own. After the weapons presentation, he sends Tony back to base camp with some kind of long-range patrol detachment instead of his actual transport caravan, so he'll miss a meeting or something. Then, when Tony is captured, Rhodes feels responsible. Now it makes sense that he would stick his neck out for Tony in such a dramatic way. He's trying to atone for the guilt he feels. This could also help Tony learn to treat Rhodes with more respect.
Sort of makes you want to treat me with more respect, doesn't it?
This is a minor example, but there are pretty major ones too. Probably the biggest one is the not building weapons thing. When Tony is captured by the Ten Rings, they order him to build them a missile. During this time, the Spirit Guide teaches him how his company's weapons have harmed innocent people. Because of this, Tony decides to have nothing more to do with the weapons business. In fact, this is the first thing that he does as soon as he gets home. Honorable, right? Tony has realized how blind he was about his business and has committed himself to a more ethical way of life. The thing is, having Tony make this decision so early in the movie kind of breaks the story. At no point is he conflicted about it. He sees his weapons being used by terrorists, hears the story of the Spirit Guide, and immediately pivots. On the one hand, this is consistent with his characterization. We know that he thinks quickly and commits hard to his choices. But on the other hand, now the movie isn't about anything. Stuff happens, of course, but it doesn't make any sense. Because Tony now has no conflict, he has nothing to do. He has nothing to work out. So the movie just uses him as a puppet. Related to this is Obi. It is revealed that he was the one who orchestrated the whole kidnapping of Tony in the first place and initially wanted to have him killed. When Tony survives and returns, Thane has to come up with another plan. But the thing is, we never know why he wants to kill Tony. Not really. Is it for power? It seems pretty clear that Stane already runs everything in the company anyway. Tony is mostly a ceremonial figurehead. Besides, later on, Tony is voted off the board. Seems like with a little politicking, Stane could get himself voted CEO. Is it for jealousy? From what we can see of him, Stane doesn't really seek the spotlight, though he doesn't shun it either. Is it to satisfy an old grudge with Stark Sr. or Tony? Nothing along these lines is ever put forward. Is it because he disagrees with the new direction of the company? Obviously not, since that happens after the initial attempt at Tony's life. Basically, because the source and nature of Stane's conflict is unclear, his antagonism is unmotivated. It only happens because the story needs it to. Some of this is an issue with characterization, but a lot of it comes down to conflict development. Any of the reasons I've given already would be perfectly plausible motives for Stane to want to kill Tony, and they're kind of introduced in the movie anyway. They just need a little development. The result of Tony's game-changing decision about the company and Stane's unmotivated drive to kill him is a plot that almost completely breaks itself. And it breaks itself because it can't offer any justification whatever for Tony building the Iron Man suits, which is the whole reason for the movie in the first place. Riddle me this. Why does Tony make his new suit? Is it because A, he feels like he has to defend himself from an ongoing threat? B, he views the suit as a way of the future for his company? C, he feels guilt for the innocent people he has harmed through his company and wants to be the protector? Or D, the movie needs him to?
It was the precious Mr. Stewart.
I will here briefly outline two potential plots for Iron Man, given the setup that we already have. 1. In this version, Tony makes his choice to stop making weapons the same as before. He's not conflicted about it and is committed. For the story to continue, though, he must meet resistance from somewhere, so initially this comes from the Ten Rings, whom Tony fears after his escape. In fact, they do manage to attack his home. Fortunately, no one is hurt, but this motivates him to protect what he has, particularly since his relationship with Pepper is developing. So, while his company makes no weapons, he privately develops a new Iron Man suit. Meanwhile, Stain, who has been pressuring Tony for viable alternatives to save a company in freefall, finds out about the suit. He informs Rhodes, who expresses great interest as well. While trying to keep the suit out of their hands, Tony has to confront the hypocrisy the suit represents. Eventually, Stain, in order to advance the company, develops his own Iron Man tech, like he does in the movie, so that we can still end up with robots punching each other and stuff. 2. In this version, Tony takes much longer to decide about making weapons. After his escape, he begins actively developing the Iron Man suit through Stark Industries. Stain immediately sees its commercial value, and Rhodes sees its military application. However, an initial batch of prototypes is stolen en route to a testing facility by the Ten Rings, who modify them and use them to actually threaten the US. Tony is again confronted by the consequences of his actions, and this time it sticks. But the only way to combat the threat that he can see is to build an even better suit and take the baddies on himself. In this version, Stain can be in league with the Ten Rings like he was before, and as long as Tony holds the secrets of the suit, he can't have him killed. Instead, this is what we get. Tony escapes the Ten Rings by building an armored combat suit. When he gets back, he announces that Stark Industries will no longer manufacture weapons. Then he goes home and, immediately and for no reason than that the movie needs him to, he starts building a better Iron Man suit. He tells Rhodes that it isn't for peacekeeping, but it clearly is designed to accommodate a lot of weapons because he goes off to the war zone in basically the drop of a hat. Stain finds out about the suit and wants to develop it, which Tony refuses because of the weapons thing, all the while weaponizing the suit to disrupt active combat zones and kill people. Now, as I've noted, this could be an interesting conflict. The central hypocrisy within Tony the central hypocrisy within Tony that the suit represents, that the world doesn't get weapons, only I get weapons because I'll use them right. But for that to work, the movie has to recognize and develop it, which it doesn't. The movie just takes it as a given that there needs to be an Iron Man suit. Fine, but it doesn't do anything to justify its existence. This is not a story of a man who is outwardly idealistic, but who harbors a violent inner secret, or a man dealing with the consequences of an escalating military-industrial complex, or a man who is seduced into abandoning his morals by the celebrity of being a superhero, all of which are hinted at in the movie, but never really developed. It's just a story about an Iron Man suit. By backflipping away from every opportunity to develop the conflicts the story's premise lays out, the movie breaks itself. Things happen, there are jokes, there are punches, there is no more.
Not bread.
Here are other thoughts I have about Iron Man, in no particular order. 1. Tony's arc reactor heart thing is never fully explained. At first we hear that it is to keep shrapnel from entering his heart, but when Obadiah steals it, the movie acts like it's his literal heart. It's implied, or at least we're made to understand, that Stain is leaving Tony for dead. 2. Stain's resistance to mini-arc reactor tech is puzzling. One would think that manufacturing clean energy sources like this would be big business, especially in a world that is in relative peacetime. This only reiterates how undeveloped he is. 3. I like that we get to spend so much time with Tony as he's developing the suit. This is the film's main departure from reality, and seeing it develop so much really lends a lot of credibility. 4. The nature of the hand blasts is never defined. Is it just like energy, like force, or does it burn? Failing to define powers is a constant Marvel issue, by the way. This is going to come up basically every time. 5. It feels very weird that none of Tony's actions ever have any accountability. He shoots up a combat zone, gets in an altercation with the Air Force, and helps murder a well-known executive of a massive company. I mean, I think it's implied that this stuff is just kind of swept under the rug by S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, but apart from Pepper being worried Tony will get himself killed, no one brings it up. No one seems to really care that he does these things. This reinforces another problematic Marvel trait, which is that the good guys are good and right in whatever they do because they're good and right. 6. The situation with Stark Industries is left pretty unresolved at the end of the movie. We don't know what their plans and prospects are, which is weird given how central that was to the whole plot for most of it. 7. Where does the Iron Man name come from? Does Black Sabbath exist in this universe? If so, what is their song about? And if not, where does the moniker come from? I know this feels like a nitpick, but it's literally the character's name and the movie's name, so the fact that it just kind of is what it is frustrating. It also underscores one reason why maybe comics are not the best things to try and adapt for adult audiences. This isn't something that you would ever think to question in a comic book. Of course, a comic book hero is going to have a weird, funny nickname or whatever. It feels weird to do this in a movie targeted to not children. At least it's something that if you think about, stops kind of making sense, and it's one of those little things that can just kind of take you out of the story, which in a story like this you don't want to have. 8. Honestly, it's refreshing to see that the stakes aren't the fate of the universe. I'd forgotten that comic book movies could do that. And 9. It's also refreshing to see characters getting it on. Maybe that's a weird thing to say. But once Marvel is bought out by Disney, no one is allowed to feel strong emotions or passion, and they're just kind of robots doing things. Here, Tony feels like a human. And I think that's basically all I have to say. As with all Marvel movies, this one is made well enough. It looks like a movie. There's nothing like awkward or embarrassing in any of its execution. It's just the story feels like a rough draft, or a few different stories kind of grafted together. Besides Tony, none of the characters are really developed or characterized, and since none of the potential conflict is explored, most of their actions feel unmotivated. As a result, the plot doesn't really make sense if you think about it very much. Stuff happens because it happens, and it's a fun enough ride to make you think that it was a good movie. But it's not. It's lying to you, and I'm sorry. Anyway, I hope this was mildly interesting for the 7 of you watching. I'll see you next time when we'll be talking about The Incredible Hulk, possibly the only Marvel movie out there that people have an accurate assessment of. Good night.
Sorry.
You're an absolute mess.